I'm Daniel Vitalis, a modern-day hunter-gatherer. I didn't grow up hunting, fishing, or foraging. My passion for wild food led me to learn as an adult. Join me as we hunt, fish, forage, and cook incredible meals to share with friends and family. This is Wild Fed. This is one of my favorite times of the year. The snow has melted, the days are growing longer, and the first wild greens of the season are pushing their way up through the soil. Turkey season opens in a few days, and the gobblers can already be heard each morning at daybreak. In the meantime, Avani and I are setting off by canoe to forage ostrich fern fiddleheads, a substantial spring green and a traditional Maine early season staple. Paddling together is one of our most cherished activities. We eagerly look forward to opportunities to get the boat in the water.
All right, underway.
Just a week ago, we scouted this riverbank looking for fiddleheads.
Well, we know we're in the right place because these are the reproductive remnants. You can sort of see there, it produces spore. This is the spore-producing part of the ostrich fern, which is in its immature stage is the fiddlehead that we're after. That's the wild edible we're looking for. But we're here early, clearly, because everywhere the plant is, the remnant from last year, we don't see any new growth coming up. So we're looking for that meristematic, young, coiled up fiddlehead, and it's not here yet. So we'll push on further down and see what we see. But I think we're probably at least a week early, maybe a little more. You can see here all the leaves that have folded back. So that was a leaf. That's the reproductive part. But as we peel it back, you can actually see that inside here.
Wow, that's amazing.
Are all the new fiddleheads getting ready to come out.
So beautiful.
A week has passed and we've returned to see if it's harvest time.
I'm thinking we should be able to go fairly straight to the spots now, assuming they haven't been harvested and they're there.
Yeah.
I'm a bit nervous about our timing. Between competition and overharvest from commercial foragers and the rapid rate at which these plants mature, I want to make sure we're here at the right time.
Wow, we're already missing a bunch of ferns, it looks like. I see a bunch opened up. Man, that's fast.
It's not looking good. The speed at which these plants mature can be overwhelming, especially when you've been busy getting ready for turkey season.
We've missed it.
Our first stop's only thinly populated by plants already past their prime. I'm deflated.
Well, maybe further down where the river was higher, longer.
Yeah, but I think we should get some in here while we're here. There's a little bit. Not much, but just in case. You want to bring the basket?
Yep.
It's not what I was hoping for, but Avani's optimism keeps me going. We decide to take advantage of what little we can.
Because when they've opened like that, they're no longer good.
It's just like they're pretty open. I'd like to see it more like, that's what we want, is like this. And these leaves, see how those leaves are coming out?
Yeah.
These are just like, so get the youngest ones that you can, the most curled up, and we'll hopefully find some little more prime down the river. Man, it was just here. It's amazing how quickly we couldn't, remember how few there were coming up. Maybe like 2 days ago would have been perfect. This is really the stage that we're looking for here. You can see that this ostrich fern leaf, this fiddlehead, is rolled up, coiled real tightly, and still has all these rust-colored scales on them. We'll actually remove that when it's time to eat these. We'll wash those away. But when I remove them, you can see that underneath, all those individual leaflets are still tightly curled here, really tightly bound up. As it starts to unfurl, and this is happening over the course of a couple of days, you can see that the leaflets are just beginning to poke out. I'd still eat it at this phase By this phase, it's ceasing to be a food. We could eat this, but we're getting a little bit more fiber, we're getting a lot more of these leaves, and we're going to start to accumulate some flavors that aren't as nice. This here is definitely past the food phase. We've got it opened up quite a bit, leaflets sticking out all along that petiole. The next stage would look like this, and then eventually the leaf is starting to fully unfold. This, not something that we eat. It's not poisonous, it's just not as pleasant of a food. But these stages here, this is where we want to harvest them, and that's what we're going to bring home and cook by steaming, frying, or lightly boiling. Our general rule for the conservation of fiddleheads when we're harvesting them, these ostrich ferns, is that we're looking for the number of leaves that are growing up out of this fern crown. That's that part of the plant that remains throughout the year that the next year's leaves come up out of, and that's just here underground. In this case, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fiddleheads or 6 leaves growing up out of it. We always take half or less than half. If I have 6 here, I can take up to 3. If there's 7, I'm only going to take 3 again. I can't take 3.5. The reason being we want to leave enough leaves for the plant to continue to photosynthesize for its own life cycle, and we want to leave enough for other animals that feed on these plants as well, including other people.
At the takeout, the water was higher, and I have a feeling that the water is receding gradually. Like even from up here, it's going to recede quicker than downstream, so
Right.
they'll be at a better stage.
She's probably right, so we set off to see if the foraging improves downstream. She's got a lot more experience paddling rivers than I do, and I trust her instincts. Her optimism's a reminder that being out here is about more than just the harvest. For us, paddling together is a symbol of what makes a relationship work. It takes both people participating completely to keep your boat on course. Now it's time to see if conditions have improved downriver.
Wow, some fatties out here.
Now Daddy's happy.
These are the kind of fiddleheads we've been looking for. Much larger and more substantial, and coiled more tightly than those upriver. The morale has improved, and now it's time to get to the business of filling the basket. We can hardly wait to cook up this year's first meal of wild greens. This is shaping up to be an excellent spring. It's the opening day of Maine's spring turkey season. We've been in position since before first light, and the gobbles are already filling the cool morning air. The strategy's fairly simple. Camouflage yourself completely. Turkeys have exceptional eyesight. Put out a decoy and pretend you're her as you attempt to call in a gobbler who's out looking for receptive hens. Everything started out perfectly. With our first gobbler coming in before sunrise, I'm thinking, like last year, I might just tag out on day 1. And though my calling is amateur at best, this Tom doesn't seem to mind.
Fuck.
To confirm he's uninjured, I run ahead to see if he's on the ground, just out of sight. At over 50 yards, I took a shot on the edge of my shotgun's range. Though shaken up and peppered with pellets, he's gotten away unharmed.
Oh, he was out of range. That was stupid. I just thought he might walk up and pass that up to where that hen went, so I should have waited and let him get closer, but It wasn't like coming over toward us. Fuck. All right, see that? I hit him. It's still warm. What an idiot.
I'm starting to worry this might be the beginning of a very long week.
We've just located 3 or 4 toms in a field. Bunch of hens. Even some deer in that field with them. We've got to sneak our way around to the side of this field, so we're trying to flank them. Hopefully, if everything goes right, we'll be able to use the turkey fan and go into a reap-style hunt. We're gonna have to be quiet. We're gonna have to be careful. But here goes.
As I approach the edge of a field that looks like a scene out of Bambi, the whole menagerie starts running.
Fuck. Fuck.
I look up to see my friend's truck speeding off.
That was Mark that scared him off. Mark just drove by. Fucking Mark. God damn it.
I'm getting frustrated. We've been hunting for days and had tons of action, but we just can't seem to close the deal. There's only one thing to do. We keep hunting.
Okay, here we go. 2 of them coming in.
Just when I think these 2 birds are coming home with us, they spook and take off running.
Oh, fuck. No, no, no.
It's another morning. We snuck into a new spot under the cover of darkness where we located 2 toms headed to their roost the night before. But this time, we're too close.
We're in the roost. Fuck. God damn it.
That's the sound of our birds flying away. Unload, back to the truck, try again.
I'm gonna consult the maps.
Calling and listening for the reply of gobbles, we've located another tom. I quickly put the decoy down, get set up, and start calling again.
I think we should just walk. Get closer.
I spend a couple of hours courting this bird's attention, but eventually he decides I'm not his type. So, we keep on hunting. It's been 5 days. At this point, I'm as much napping against this tree as I am hunting. It's early afternoon, and we're close to packing it in. Then, something gets my attention. It's a hen with several jakes in tow.
They're all after that one hen.
These young males aren't interested in my calls. But she is, and wherever she goes, they follow.
Oh yeah, they're all following her.
She's pinpointed my location, and she's coming in hot. Now, most hunters are after mature toms, but after 5 days in the field with our leek harvest coming up, these jakes are starting to look real good. It's a tense moment. And after having so many birds slip through my fingers, I'm just trying to stay calm and relaxed. I've aligned my sights, and I'm starting to think I can take 2 birds with 1 stone. It's done. Both birds are down. The rest of the flock spooks as I come out to claim them. I know it looks graphic, but I want to dispatch these birds quickly. Like the proverbial chicken without a head, wild turkeys often keep on moving in the moments after they die. So I take a moment to wait for their nervous systems to relax and for them to go still.
And like that, it happens.
I've got 2 tags for bearded birds, and the first order of business is to get them on so we can legally transport them to the tagging station.
Pair of jakes. First year birds. Or last year's birds, I should say.
Headed out, there's a deeply fulfilling sense of satisfaction. It's a feeling I never knew before I started hunting. After 5 days of being run around and outsmarted by turkeys, I'm ready to get these birds home. The hunt is over, but the work's not done yet. I've still got to get these birds ready for the kitchen. Before a much-needed night of sleep, I'm cooking up one celebratory meal. Fresh turkey hearts and livers, sautéed with garlic and onions, rounds out the last day of a successful hunt.
That's what we've been working for.
We need one more wild plant to finish out our meal plan. This time we're foraging wild leeks, also called ramps, on a river island which hosts a prolific floodplain terrace. I'm here with Arthur Haynes and his wife Sarah. Arthur is my foraging mentor, and his passion for wild food is informed by his work as one of the leading botanists of the Northeast.
When I'm at my spots for fiddleheads, I'm seeing a lot of the same species. So I'm in a riparian area on a really nice clean river. I see many of the same indicator species, but I don't see wild leeks.
Yeah, wild leeks are a fairly rare plant in the state. There's fewer than 100 occurrences over the entire state of Maine.
Oh no, you're kidding. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and most of the leek populations are also quite small. They might comprise 10, 20, 30, 50 individuals. We see so many here and because there's 2 factors. One of those is we happen to be on an incredibly rich terrace above the river here, where the kinds of soils that they need to grow, where they can compete They're present here, but
Okay.
they need these ultra-rich soils. But we're also dealing with a huge colony of wild leeks, the largest that I've ever seen in my life, and we happen to be less than half a mile from a historical indigenous settlement who no doubt gathered here and may have tended these populations several centuries ago.
And that's an important part of it, is that what we're seeing here, this density of food, may not be an accident, might not be
That's right.
just natural processes unfolding, but might be
Human
interaction with the landscape. That's really powerful to think about.
And I think the most important thing to remember is they're performing lethal collection to individual plants and yet still increasing the numbers through their knowledge of ecology of place.
Now, I've come here with you for, this must be the 4th year, maybe the 5th
longer,
year.
yeah.
I've come here many years with you now. We always harvest in a really specific manner, and it's very different than what we see commercially done. So when I see them in restaurants, when I see them in specialty markets, or when I see other foragers posting online about what they've done, we harvest differently. Could you explain a little bit about the methodology and the strategy that we're employing here on this landscape?
Well, right now, what we're employing is a way of making sure that we don't perform lethal collection, because this has a bulb, just like an onion or a garlic, that sits underground. And the leaves that come up, right now, these big flat green leaves, they precede the flowers. And what we do, generally there's 2 or 3 that are produced, we take just one. And we leave most of that photosynthetic collection area, those solar panels as you referred to them, there and present, so that this plant can still go through its whole cycle of flowering and fruiting this particular year. And we fill baskets with this method, and we do not do any damage to the actual plants or the population. Of course, if we want to gather bulbs, the trick is to recognize we're killing that individual, but if we gather seeds to plant in those holes that we freshly tilled, we bring them back, and that's another method.
You've been the conscientious steward of this particular leek patch for some time. What's your hope, like legacy hope, for this place when you're gone back into the earth?
Yeah, I'm certainly hoping that the information that we use in our foraging becomes common knowledge, like it used to be. There were people here that gathered, we're still talking, centuries ago at this point, who gathered and left us bounty. And I want the society that lives here now to do the same.
With our baskets filled with wild leeks, we pack up and paddle back. I always find it hard to leave this island behind. I can feel our place in the lineage of foragers who've stewarded this landscape through time. It's an honor to be part of this island's rich, living history. But now, it's time to get these leeks into the cooler.
One of the first things you want to do with produce, and this is the same if you're at a farm stand, you're harvesting out of your garden, or you're foraging. The first thing you want to do with produce is get it cooled down. In some cases, they need to be cleaned. Produce needs to be cleaned, but these leeks are already really clean. I'm not going to wash them. I'm just going to get them into these bags and cool them down as rapidly as I can. Now, these green bags are called produce Stay Fresh bags. And what they are a polymer with a really small micro pore surface. These plants are still living tissue and they need to respirate. But if we can slow that respiration down, the plant material will stay fresher longer. It'll taste a lot better. It'll stay a lot sweeter. And I'll get weeks out of these rather than days. And it's really crucial that I don't spend all this time out here harvesting just to lose these to wilting. So I'll pack them up, get them in the coolers. When I get home, they'll go right into the refrigerator.
We're at the Standard Gastropub in Bridgeton, Maine. It's a former gas station turned into a hip casual spot specializing in microbrewed beers and upscale pub-style food. We'll be hosting our friends tonight for a wild-fed meal, made with the ingredients we've been out hunting and gathering.
Hey, Will.
This is my friend Will Holmes, the owner and tonight's chef. We're dropping off our ingredients for this evening's meal: ostrich fern fiddleheads, wild leeks, some acorn flour from last year, and, just as requested, the dark meat of our wild turkeys. We'll leave these ingredients to get prepped by his team while we sit outside to discuss tonight's menu plan over a glass of cider and a beer.
So as you know, I spent the last month out harvesting fiddleheads, wild leeks, and a couple of turkeys. I have my own ways of cooking at home, but they're nothing like what you guys are able to do here. So talk to me about what your thinking was with those ingredients and what we can expect on the menu tonight.
So, we started talking about this. I was mulling over some ideas because we're in Maine. Ploys are one of those traditional kind of Maine, one of the very few, I guess, things that really dates back into our history. You had some acorn flour that we added to the mix, so we're going to be doing a buckwheat and acorn flour ploy, or kind of savory crepe. We decided to use the dark meat of the turkey because it's something, again, I think a lot of people go straight to that breast. It's what they are used to. It's their sandwich meat, or it's the thing.
Most wild turkey dark meat never makes it to the kitchen.
Exactly. It's a little harder to deal with it, but it is the most flavorful, wonderful part of that animal. We pressure cooked that off with some fennel bulb and a little bit of wild cider and some of our house chicken stock, and pulled that off of the bone. Beautiful, succulent, awesome dark meat. And then, so the ramps we blanched off really quick in some water. That helps keep that color in them, and then process them down so you get that really bright vegetal kind of texture and flavor. And that's going to be our sauce on top. And then the fiddleheads, we've done some stuff here in the past. I wanted to do something new and different. We're going to do this cool shaved fennel root salad with sauteed fiddleheads. Got a little bit of anchovy mayo as a base to give it a little bit of that depth and fat content. And then we did a little bit of a beef fat breadcrumb. It'll be a nice little crunchy, fatty piece on top.
Awesome. So, really excited to see it.
This meal sounds great. Our friends start arriving. First, Arthur.
You know Will? Yeah. Arthur, Will. How long has it been?
Then his daughter Samara.
It's good to see you.
And his wife Sarah.
Hey, how are you? Good to have you.
And then Mark arrives. You may remember his truck from the Bambi scene.
This is my chance. Did you guys get to meet hunting mentor, now boating lessons, mentor?
Nice.
This is my botany mentor and foraging mentor, so it's good to have you guys together.
After a productive spring hunt and foraging season, it's great to get everyone together to celebrate with a meal. Our bartender's putting something special together tonight. A rye whiskey cocktail using a syrup I made from birch tree sap just a few weeks ago. Similar to maple syrup, the sap of these trees is boiled down to produce a sweet, molasses-like syrup. It's more savory than maple and imparts an almost smoky flavor to the drinks. This is more than a simple toast. It's a celebration of the season and an honoring of the species we've harvested for food. And these drinks are one more way we can enjoy the terroir of our local landscape. Then our first course arrives. A shaved fennel salad with sautéed ostrich fern fiddleheads and a beef fat breadcrumb, all dressed with an anchovy mayo. As we eat, Will begins preparing the main course, red oak acorn ploys. It's his wild adaptation of the traditional recipe brought here by the many French Canadians who settled in Maine. He tops each one with a wild leek sauce and finishes them with the braised dark meat of our wild turkeys. I'll be honest, my mouth is watering. Growing up, I always preferred the dark meat of chicken and domestic turkeys, and though I've experimented a lot with smoking the drumsticks of my birds, I haven't had wild turkey prepared in quite this way. Many hunters simply breast out their birds, complaining that the dark meat is barely edible. I have high hopes that Will's about to prove them wrong, and maybe even give us a new way to utilize our harvest. This meal is exceptional.
I feel like I'm eating way faster than everybody each time.
Moist and rich, with so much more flavor than the white meat on its own. One by one, over the sounds of laughter and conversation, we return for seconds and thirds until there isn't a bite left. This is only the beginning of spring, and there's still a whole season of hunting, fishing, and foraging yet to come.